Welcome to a Plumsail Forms for SharePoint tutorial. In the previous video, we explored the basics of working with SharePoint fields in Plumsail Forms using JavaScript. If you haven't watched that video yet, you can find a link in the description. And today we're going to dive deeper into working with SharePoint lookup fields in JavaScript. Let's get started. So what is a SharePoint lookup? It is a field type that allows you to create a connection between two lists or libraries within the same SharePoint site. Plumsail Forms for SharePoint also has a lookup control. This control does the same thing, but its source list can be located at another site. This means you can pull data from anywhere in your SharePoint environment. The main difference between working with a lookup field and a Plumsail lookup control in JavaScript is how you reference them. For a lookup field, use fd.field, and for a Plumsail lookup control, use fd.control. In this video, all examples will be for the SharePoint lookup field, but the same code and scenarios can be applied to lookup controls as well. Find a link to the documentation for the Plumsail lookup control in the description. This is my SharePoint list with a lookup column. This column gets data from the source list from the title column. Let's get back to the Plumsail Forms for SharePoint and open the JavaScript editor. As you learned in our previous video, all code on the form should be wrapped inside the SP-rendered event. So let's start with that. To access the field, we need its internal name. We'll go back to the designer, select the field, and copy its name. Lookup fields are a bit more complex because they retrieve data from another list. This means they need some time to load. To ensure the field is fully loaded before we interact with it, you need to use the ready method. Okay. Let's add an alert that will display a message when the form opens and when the field is fully loaded. I'll save the form for all form types. Okay, let's test it. And here is our message. Next, let's explore how to get and set the value of a lookup field. This lookup field allows the selection of a single option. I'll add another lookup field to the form that allows multiple selections. Go to JavaScript editor. I remove the alerts and define fd globally with window.fd equal fd. This will allow me to access fields in the browser console. And I'll save the form. The value of a single and multiple selection fields is stored slightly differently. Let's output the field values to see the difference, and I'll start with a single choice lookup field. The value is an object. The lookup ID property holds the ID of a selected option, and the lookup value property holds the display text. To access the property value, use its key. Let's log the display text and the ID separately. Here is the ID of the selected option, and here is the display text. So to set the value of a single selection lookup field, you will need to know the ID of a target item. Let's set the lookup field value to line 1, which has an ID of 1. When you set a field value programmatically, use the reload value method. It will load the display value and the value of additional columns. We will discuss additional columns a bit later. Next, multiple selection lookup field. Let's output the field value to the browser console. I will need the field internal name. Go. The field value is stored as an array of objects. I have 3 options selected, and here are 3 objects. To access the property of an option, use square brackets with the index of option you want to access. To access the display text and ID of each option, we'll need to iterate through the array. Let's use the forEach method to log the lookup ID and lookup value of each selected option. Okay, I log the ID. And the display text. And here are all selected options with IDs and the display text.
populate a multiple selection lookup field, you'll need to create an array of IDs. List the IDs in square brackets, separated by a comma. And again, we will use reload value method to load all data for the selected options. And here is the result.
So what else can you do with a lookup field? You can filter the options. This can be a static filter or a filter based on the values of our fields on the form. In the designer interface, it's very easy to set up a dynamic filter of the lookup options. This filter will show only the options where the value of one column in the source list matches the value of a field on your form. This requires no coding. I won't go into detail here, but if you are interested in learning more, you'll find a link in the description. With the code, you can create more complex filter conditions. The filtering query for a lookup field are based on the OData URI request schema, which allows you to filter by one or more columns using various comparison operators. To build a filter query, use the OData query operator supported by the column type. Find the link to a list of all OData operators in the description. Note that not all column types are supported. You cannot filter by node, hyperlink, image, location, calculated, person, and lookup columns with multi-selection. Let's see how to create a filter for different types of columns and try different logical and comparison operators. Let's start with a single line of text column. To create a filter query, you will need an internal name of a column. You can find it in the column settings. Go to List Settings, click on a column to open its settings. You'll find the internal name of a column in the page URL. Another option I find more convenient is to open the list in the Plumsail designer. Add a field to a form, and copy the internal name from the field properties. Let's create a filter that shows only items where the single line of text column is equal to line 3. I call the field .filter equal, use the internal name of the column, equal line 3. We must add the field refresh method to load the options matching the new filter. And here is the result, title line 3. Let's convert this to a dynamic filter. I'll add a title field for the form. Save. I'll write the function that will run whenever the title field value changes. I'll use the onChange event, pass the value to a function. The function will update the filter of the lookup field. So I type filter equal, use the internal name of the column, and equal to the value of the title. Don't forget the refresh method. Also, I will clear the lookup field value to remove any selected options that are no longer relevant. Let's test. And I type line 2. And here is title line 2. Moving on, let's test the substring of comparison operator that determines whether a column contains a string. I'll type string. The first is value, and the second is the internal name of the column that should contain this value. There is one item that has value unique line 8. So when I type line 8 in title field, there is only one option that contains line 8 in the text column. The operators that work for a single line of text column also work for single and multiple choice columns. Let's filter by single choice column and show only options where choice 3 is selected. I will need internal name of a column equal choice 3. Don't forget about refresh method.
Let's test line 8, 9, and 10. Double check. Line 8, 9, and 10. Let's test filtering by the multiple choice column. And again, I will need internal name. And there are 4 records. Let's check. The limitation for multiple choice columns is that you cannot filter by the exact combination of the selected options. For instance, if I update the condition using the AND operator, so that multiple choice column is equal to choice 3 and choice 2. I expect that only line 2 will be shown in the lookup dropdown. However, it will also show line 1 as it also contains this option. Note this when filtering by multiple choice columns. The next column you can filter by is yes, no. It is a Boolean value where 1 is yes and 0 is no. It's quite straightforward. Use the equal query operator to filter the column. Let's show only options with yes value. Again, I need internal name. And here is what we see on the form. Let's move on to number and currency columns. These columns store values as integers, and you can filter results by comparing column values to integers. For instance, let's create a query to show only records where the number column value is less than or equal to 20. Again, I need internal name. And these are all options that match the condition, lines from 1 to 6. This could also be a dynamic filter. Let's filter results by a field on the form. I'll add number field to a form, save. And as we did for a single line of text field, I'll write a function that triggers when number field value changes. I'll use change event, pass the value of a number field to a function, update the lookup filter, use the internal name of a column, greater than or equal to number. Don't forget about the refresh method. And again, I will clear the lookup value to remove all options that are no longer valid. I type 100 and there are 2 lines that match the condition. It is line 8 and 9. You can also create more complex conditions by using comparison operators like AND and OR to combine multiple conditions. So let's try it. I'll add 1 more number field to the form. Go to JavaScript editor. And I'll write the function to show only options where the number column value falls within the specified range. I'll define variables to store field values. Field number 1 and number 2. So the value of the number column must be greater than or equal to value of the number 1 field and less than or equal to number 2 field. Again, I will use the refresh method. I will call the function inside the ready event of the lookup field when the number field value changes. So the first one is number 1 on change. And I also clear lookup value. And the second one, for the second one, it is the same. I will only update the internal name of a field. And I will call the function onFormLoad. Again, inside the ready event. Save. And let's test. I type 13 in number 1 column and 16 in number 2. And there are 2 records that match the condition, line 5 and 6. Let's check. Yes, they are within the range. So how does filtering for date and time columns work? Basically the same as for other columns. Let's create a filter to show only options where the date is less than or equal to specific date. Less than or equal to. And let it be this date. Again, use the refresh method. Let's test, and here is line 4. Let's check. All is correct. You can filter by the current date or by the value of the date field on the form, but you need to convert it to string format. Let's create a dynamic filter. I'll replace number fields with date fields and update a function to show only options within the selected date range. So I will need to update the internal name of the fields. It will be date 1 and date 2. And update the filter condition. So use the internal name of a column and update. And I will use toDateString method to convert dates to a string format. Next, I will update the internal names in the function. Save and test. So let's select custom date. It's the same for the date 2. And here are 2 lines, 3 and 4. Let's check. All is correct. And a tip for you, modified and created columns are date columns too, so you can filter by them as well. Next, person and lookup columns. These column types store values as objects with properties, and you can filter by these properties. To get the property value, you need to write a slash after the column name and then the key title like this. Let's start with a lookup column. The column value stores the display value that the user sees in the list view as a string, and the ID of a selected item is an integer. Let's see how it works. I will need the lookup column internal name. And to filter by item display text, use any comparison operator supported by strings. I want to show item where lookup column title is sum text A. And it must show line 3. Let's see. And here is the result. And you can also filter by the ID. Change the key title to ID. And I want to filter by the ID 1, like so. And let's see, and there are only 3 records returned. You can convert this filter to depend on another field on the form. For instance, use the value of another lookup field on the form to build a query. Let's go back to the designer. I will add another lookup field that retrieves data from the same list as the lookup column in the source list. And I will filter the options in the lookup field based on the ID of the item selected in this field. Basically, I'm creating a cascading dropdowns. I define a variable to store the ID of a selected option. If no option is selected, the variable's value is null. I also update filter lookup ID equal to variable. And I update the internal name of the field. Copy it, paste. I will pass the value of the filtering lookup to the function. And I also will call the function on form load when the filtering lookup field is ready too. and save a form. And let's test. So I select item 1, and there are only 3 lines that match the condition. When I select some text 8 option, there is only 1 line, line 3. Let's check, and all works as expected.
Let's move on to the person column. Its value is also an object containing information about selected user. In the design interface, you can filter by login, email, display name, and department. There are more properties available, and you can use them to build filtering queries. All available key titles can be found in the Plumsail documentation. If you want to filter the data by the exact person, it's best to use via email. The key for emails is email, where E and M are capital letters. Microsoft Query is case sensitive, so pay attention to this. So let's test it. I will filter by Johnny. In the lookup dropdown, the only option that meets the condition is line 2. You can get a user's email for the filter from another person field on the form, or obtain the current user's email. Let's filter by the current user. And there should be 2 options. Here we are. All person column properties are strings, so you can use any comparison operator supported by strings. Similarly, you can filter by a department or job title. I want to see all options where the person's job title is marketing assistant. And in the lookup field, there is line 4, as Alex is a marketing assistant.
Let's create a dynamic filter by person column that depends on a form field. I will add person field to the form and will remove filtering lookup column. Then I will need to update the function. I will add the condition to make sure the person is selected in the person field, and will update the filter condition. So I will filter by person email. Don't forget that the Microsoft Query is case sensitive, so use valid key title. And if the person is not selected, the filter will be cleared. And I will update the internal name of the field. Save, and let's test. In the person field, I select Adele. And in the lookup field, there is only one option that matches the condition. This is line 6.
By default, only the item ID and the display value of the target field are retrieved to the form. The extra and expand properties hold data for all data queries and allow loading other column values to the form. This can be done in the designer user interface. Simply list the internal names of the columns you want to retrieve in the extra column properties, each on a new line like this. This works for columns like single line of text, number, choice, currency, and yes/no. As you already know from the filter chapter, lookup and person column values are objects. So first you need to expand the object and then access the property of the object. Therefore, you need to list the column name in the expand property. And in the extra fields property, you need to write a slash after the column name and the key title of the value you need to retrieve. For instance, if I need the display text of the lookup column and the email of a person, I will write this. In extra fields, I will type lookup/title and person/email. The same can be done with the code.
Let's test it in the browser console. I call the field. I start with expand property, so I type .expand fields equal, and in square brackets I will list field names that I want to expand. It is lookup and person fields. Next, extra fields. I call the field dot extra fields equal, and in square brackets, I will list column names I want to retrieve on the form. I will start with lookup column. I write /title, next person, /email. The next column names like single choice, single line text, and number. Close. Let's output the lookup field value to the console to see how extra field's value is stored. And here are the extra values. They are now the properties of the object and can be accessed separately. Let's test it. And I'll output single choice, single line text, number, lookup display text, and person email. You can use these extra fields, for instance, to populate other fields on the form. Then a user selects an option in the lookup field. I'll add fields to the form. I will add field to store single line text field, choice, number, lookup text, and email. Go to JavaScript editor, and I will create update fields function to populate these fields when the lookup field value changes. And I will do it for each column. So it's single line text, single choice. I need internal names, number, lookup text, and email. And I will call the function when the field value changes. Again, don't forget to place the code inside the ready event. Save, and let's test. I select title line 1, and all our columns are populated. Another use case where extra fields can be used is to change the appearance of search results in the dropdown. You can customize the template for the dropdown to show not only one column value, but also other columns values from the source list. I'll keep the same extra columns and modify the template to show their values in the dropdown. Let's go back to JavaScript editor. The changes to the template must be done inside the ESP before render function. Okay, I need to write the template. The template supports all HTML tags, and you can add styling and CSS classes if needed. And I will use internal column names.
You can also change the height of a dropdown and the height that each option takes. The page size depends on the item height, and to calculate it properly, use this formula. Height divided by item height and multiplied by 4. Let's save and test. And here is how it looks on the form. In this video, we have explored how to work with lookup field in JavaScript. We learned how to get and set lookup field value, how to filter options, get extra data from the source list, and customize the appearance of search results. If you have any questions, please see our documentation. You will find the link in the description. Or you can contact our support team. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.